Hey everyone, it's Chad back with another video this week for Sportegrity Media. And in this week's recap video, we're going to talk about the Carson Wentz trade that just went down a few days ago, go over the NBA All-Star starters as they revealed that a few days ago. And we're going to talk about FCS football and their spring season getting underway. And then also, we're going to watch possibly the best dunk of the season so far in the NBA. It was ridiculous, and you got to see it. So thanks for tuning in, and I am ready to talk some sports, so let's get to it. Let's kick things off talking about this Carson Wentz trade between the Colts and the Eagles. So with the Eagles, they obviously have been shopping Wentz around, but when the news came out that he was officially traded, I expected to see this big haul of draft picks or draft capital or a big return for the Eagles. And when I saw that all the Colts gave up for Carson Wentz was a third-round pick this year and then a conditional second-round pick next year, I thought automatically that's an instant steal for the Indianapolis Colts. So I think it's a great opportunity for Carson Wentz to revive his career. He still has talent there. I think there was a lot of issues with Philadelphia that some of it was the blame of Wentz and his bad play, but a lot of it was due to everything around him, whether it's every playmaker of his at wide receiver, tight end getting hurt throughout the year, and just overall instability at the coaching position with Doug Peterson now gone. I think there was a lot of issues that kind of trickled into the locker room there and just created a bad season there. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes with Jalen Hurts going forward on the Eagles side of things. But on the Colts side of things, they now bring in a quarterback who was an MVP candidate in Wentz just a couple years ago. And it just so happens that when he had his best season of his career that year, Frank Reich was his offensive coordinator. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that trickles down and how they're able to get the most out of Wentz this year. I mean, looking at this last season with Phillip Rivers at quarterback, the Colts were a pretty good team, and their offense wasn't lighting anyone up, but they had a pretty good defense that kind of carried it, and a great offensive line, and a great running game down the stretch. So they already have a great foundation to just bring Wentz in, place him in that Phillip Rivers role, and I think Wentz has a lot more talent, at least right now, than Phillip Rivers had last season. So I think the sky is the limit for him next year, and being connected with Frank Reich again and his old Philadelphia coach, I think that's going to maximize his success. And quite honestly, I know it's early, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the Colts make it even to an AFC championship next year. Just with this roster they have, they're ready to win now. They were just a really good quarterback away from putting it all together. And so I think it's a great trade for the Colts to give up really nothing when you're talking about a franchise quarterback. Sure, it's a huge contract you're taking on, but they're in that win now mode to where it's really one of the only missing pieces they need to get to that championship. So really love the trade for the Colts. And in basketball news, this week the NBA released the All-Star starters for the All-Star game. So the NBA is actually going to hold an All-Star game this year. I am not really sure why that's the case. I think it's kind of pointless to hold the actual game this year when you're already running into some issues with scheduling and things like that. But we'll see how it goes. But in that sense, the starters, at least on the west side of the ball, you got LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Nikola Jokic, Stephen Curry, and Luka Doncic. So great solid roster all around there. And then on the east side of things, you have Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, Kyrie Irving, and Bradley Beal. Nothing really too surprising on these lists. I think they all deserve to be a starter. The only thing that's kind of questionable to me is the fact that Luka Doncic was given the spot over Damian Lillard. So I think Lillard deserved to be a starter this year as an all-star. And really when it comes to all-stars, his whole career, Damian Lillard has been snubbed. And I think this year was a year that he should have earned it. Just look at the teams that, both of them are on. With Doncic and the Mavericks, they've really struggled to live up to their expectations this year compared to their playoffs run last year. Meanwhile, with the Blazers, the last few weeks, they haven't had their two of their top three weapons. They've had Damian Lillard, but they haven't had CJ McCollum, and they haven't had Yusuf Nurkic. So it's really been Damian Lillard carrying that team along the way and really leading the charge and keeping them alive in the playoffs. Right now, I think they sit at either 4 or 5 in the Western Conference standings. So Lillard is quite literally carrying them to stay in the hunt for a top four seed when the playoffs come. So I think that really makes it deserving for Lillard to be a starter. But you also can't fault going with Doncic either, and no doubt Lillard will be on the roster anyway, so you're really just nitpicking, and I think Doncic got it because it was overall a fan vote thing, so you can't really complain either way. On the East side of things, really no shockers there. It's really top heavy with a lot of their all-stars, and I don't think any of the 5 starters there deserve to be reserves. They all deserve to be starting. Now back to football and college football. So obviously with the FBS, that season is long gone with the championship a couple months ago, but now FCS is starting up. So the lower division of Division I football, if you're unfamiliar with them. So the FCS just started the spring season this week. So I watched a little bit of football here and there over the weekend when I had some free time. And it's really going to be fun to see organized spring football. You know, we've always had like XFL or CFL or different things in the offseason of the NFL to hold us over, but this is actually college football. And so it's really nice to see, you know, a lot of these players are going to be draft prospects this year. And so what'll be interesting to me is to see how much this spring season is going to affect the draft stock for FCS players, because usually you don't see too many of them getting drafted because sometimes they kind of get lost in the shuffle of FBS and the upper echelon of Division I football, and not as much attention goes to FCS. But now you have the spring season where they're the only football in town. So I think, you know, scouting presence at these games are going to be a lot busier. And with the lack of an NFL combine this year, I think scouts are really going to take advantage of the fact that they can go to these games and get deeper looks at some of these players from smaller schools. And obviously this isn't a thing that can be sustainable every year. So it's really the FCS one chance to take advantage of a spring season. And, you know, moving forward, even if it's fall from here on out, maybe they'll gain some extra fans and maybe they'll gain some extra viewership. No doubt there will be networks that'll pick up these games, and it'll be interesting to see how that trickles down into the future for exposure for FCS football. But it's just nice to see that starting up and having a spring season of their own, and they're still going to have playoffs. Typically it's a 24-team playoff, but they've trimmed it down to 16-team playoffs, I believe, for this year for the national championship. So we'll see how that goes, but I've always kind of liked watching FCS a little bit here and there. I'm not the hugest fan, but what draws me to them is they have a more expanded playoff format, whereas, you know, with the FBS playoffs, you have 4 teams, but it's really you know the 1 or 2 teams that are going to be in that championship game every year for the most part. So it's a little less powerhouse heavy, but by the same token of that, you already kind of know with FCS who's the favorite in North Dakota State every year because they just keep winning every year. So I guess there's not too much of a difference there, but at least you have more of the smaller schools or the lower tier schools with a chance in the playoffs, which is nice. And finally, probably my favorite thing of the week is with watching a Timberwolves game, and you won't say that too often. The Timberwolves are terrible this year, but there was a really cool highlight with Anthony Edwards, the number 1 pick in the draft this year, and he's been, you know, coming together pretty strong lately and really living up to a lot of that first round hype that he had with being taken early in the draft. But there's one play that if you didn't see it this week, I'm just going to show it to you. It's quite possibly the dunk of the year. Check it out.
Ooh, they were lucky that wasn't turned over. Anthony Edwards, that time he does finish with the exclamation point.
I mean, come on. It's going to take a lot for another player to outdo that dunk. He just rose straight up, and it's not like it was bad defense by the defender. He went up, he challenged him straight on, hand in his face, and just didn't care. He dunked, even landed on the guy. I really feel bad for that defender because that was very embarrassing, but he even got a foul on top of that. So Edwards, no doubt there's going to be more where that comes from. He's super athletic, and if he keeps growing his game, I think that he could kind of catch up to LaMelo Ball and be in the run for Rookie of the Year this year, even though he's on just an absolute terrible team in the Minnesota Timberwolves. And that's going to do it for this week's video. Thanks again for watching out there, everyone who has been loyal to me, all my new viewers, all my returning viewers. Still small, still growing, but appreciate every view, every like, every comment, every subscribe that I get along the way. So with all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like on it, and leave some comments down below as far as what you think the things that I talked about or any other cool things you saw this week in sports. And with that, we will see you next week with another video. And there's a lot of sports going on, so go out and enjoy your sports.